That's why if you want to advance spiritually, it's recommended to start according to this order. And many people think that they can open the Bible and they can read it, and it seems clear, seemingly. And that's the problem here. That you open the Bible, you open the first chapter in Genesis, and in the third chapter in Genesis, there's a story of Adam and Eve. It starts off with this dialogue between Eve and the snake, and seemingly it's a story that we're all familiar with, right? So Eve tells the snake that they're allowed to eat from this tree, but not from this tree, otherwise they'll die. And the snake says, no, you won't die. And he convinces Eve to eat from the tree, and then she takes the apple and she eats it, and then she gives it to Adam as well, and then they sinned, and etc. So and it sounds like it's this story that we all learned as kids, and Kabbalah says that none of it is what it seems like. None of this story is what it seems like. So we'll get to the explanation of that story in a moment. But first of all, we need to understand that every single one of these words is written by Kabbalists from attaining it. So when they're writing about the story of Adam and Eve, it's actually a beautiful, emotional story. And no, David, we're not talking about the tree of life. We're talking about the different codings of the languages Kabbalists write in. So these are 4 different types of code language that Kabbalists wrote their different books in. The Book of Zohar, the Tree of Life as well, the Bible, the study of the Ten Sefirot, the Book of Creation, etc. All of these are written in Kabbalistic code, which are all categorized under Pardes. And there are 4 different types, which we explained. So I hope that's clear. And there's also a great question from Alan. I'll get to your question in a second. So basically, the story of Adam and Eve, just as an example, right? So it's a beautiful, beautiful story, which doesn't talk at all about a person, Adam and his wife Eve, and a snake that crawled up and convinced her to eat from the tree. It actually talks about internal forces. So every person is built internally of these forces. Every person has this force called Chava, Eve, in them. That's the will to receive. That's the thought of creation. It's not the purpose of it, but that's what was created. And inside that desire called Chava, there is a point called Adam, which desires to reach back adhesion with the Creator. And within those desires, there is a force called the snake. And the snake is this, we all know the snake on different levels. In the most lower corporeal level, you could say it's this kind of voice inside that wants to push us away from searching for true meaning in life and trying to get us to feel satisfaction from fleeting pleasures and materialistic fulfillments, even though many of us already know deep inside, many of us know it, that these fulfillments are not real fulfillments. They're fleeting, they disappear immediately, they leave greater emptiness. But you could say that on the kind of simple level, the snake is that force within that's trying constantly to pull towards these desires. And in fact, the snake is not a bad force. There aren't any bad forces in reality, because there is only the light and the vessel. So how can there be anything bad? Only these forces are different ways of reaching adhesion with the Creator. So the force of the snake in the wisdom of Kabbalah is called Ezer Kenegdo, which means help against him. So it's seemingly against the purpose of creation, seemingly, but really this force is leading to scrutiny, is leading to question. If you didn't have this force within you, you would never end up identifying and understanding what truly matters in life, why you are alive, or asking this question or pursuing an answer to it. So really, the simple story of Adam and Eve, which we learn as kids as like something very literal, because it's seemingly in the language of Pshat, which is all clear, a snake, a woman, a man, an apple. No, none of that talks about anything on this level of reality. It all talks about internal spiritual forces. And the entire Bible, and actually all of the Kabbalistic texts, not just the Bible, but the Bible too, every single word there is written in this language of code. In some forms it's written in allegory, in others remez, in others in pshat, meaning seemingly simple, which is the most concealed form. That's why it's very misleading to try and open the Bible and through that, just by reading it, to attain spirituality, because it's very confusing. It speaks of matters that are seemingly very clear, seemingly moral codes or historical events or things like that, but actually it's not speaking a single word about any of that. Okay, so let's see if we have any questions so far. No questions so far. I don't see any. If you have any questions, then write them in. Okay, great. So let's keep going. So what does it mean that the Bible is written in this language of code, and how do Kabbalists write it? So in fact, Kabbalists, they write from a state called spiritual attainment. Now, spiritual attainment isn't that you imagine something and then you describe it. No, spiritual attainment is the deepest level of understanding. I want to read a quick quote from Baal HaSulam about spiritual attainment. It's from the article, The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah. So let's see it here. Okay, so this is from The Essence of the Wisdom of Kabbalah, and Baal HaSulam says this: Kabbalah uses only names and appellations that are concrete and real. It is an unbending rule for all Kabbalists that anything we do not attain, we do not define by a name and a word. In other words, every single word Kabbalists write, and not just in the Bible, also the Book of Creation that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, and the Tree of Life, and words that seemingly are completely abstract, like talking about even the words pshat, remez, drush, and sod, and talking about the spiritual worlds, atzilut, biriya, yetzira, asiya. You might think that, okay, it's Hebrew, but in Hebrew it's also unclear. Bria, creation. So what does it mean, a world of creation? How can you understand that? It seems like it's all abstract. So Kabbalists say no, it is anything we do not attain, we do not define by a name and a word. So what is this attainment that they speak of? So Baal HaSulam keeps on writing. Baal HaSulam is the greatest Kabbalist of this generation, you could say. He lived in the previous century, and the one before. He died in the previous century, you could say. He's called Baal HaSulam because Sulam in Hebrew means ladder, and he created a ladder to enable every person in this world to climb up the spiritual degrees. So he keeps on saying, he says, here you must know that the word attainment implies the ultimate degree of understanding. It derives from the phrase, that thy hand shall reach. That means that before something becomes utterly lucid, as though gripped in one's hands, Kabbalists do not consider it attained, but understood, comprehended, and so on. So, to delve deeper into this concept called attainment, it's important to really kind of wrap your head around it. That when you say attainment, and every single word that they wrote is from this state of attainment, it means that they were in that state. So I'll give you an example. So let's say you own a cat, all right? So if you own a cat, then you already know to identify your cat's behavior, right? So you can say, okay, you know your cat for sure, and maybe you know cats in general. So that's not attainment. Now let's take it at a higher level. Let's say you're a researcher of cats, and you own multiple cats, and you communicate with cats all day long, every day, for years and years and years. Then you could say that you have a deep understanding of what cats are, how they behave. You can probably even look at a cat and just by its movements identify what it's maybe wanting or going for or feeling even maybe. But that's still not considered attainment. In Kabbalah, the level of attainment would be achieved if you became a cat, for example. So if you're a cat, then you've attained what it means to be a cat, and nothing before that. You can have a deep level of understanding, but as long as you don't become a cat, then you don't attain what it means to be a cat. So in Kabbalah, attainment is that. It means you become that thing, you fully comprehend it, it becomes what you are and who you are. And that's really important to understand, because that means if you follow that guideline, then every single word the Kabbalists write in all of their books is written from that degree. right? So let's do a quick recap of where we are now. We said that all of these books are written in code. That's one thing. And we said that Kabbalists wrote them from attainment. Okay, so that's another thing. So if you open a book, know that it's written in code. What is this code we'll get to in a second. And know that every Kabbalist who wrote this, he didn't make it up, he wasn't philosophizing, he wasn't like someone blind trying to describe the color blue, not from attaining it, only after seeing the color blue, then starting to try and describe what that color is. Even to someone who hasn't seen it. That's possible. If you've seen something, then you can try and explain it to someone who hasn't. That is possible. Okay, so Francis is writing, so it boils down to experience, right? It is an experience, but it's not that you could say that if you read a bit of the Bible, then you get experience and then you know it. No, after you attain it and experience it for yourself, then you can talk about it, you can write about it, you can explain about it. So in that sense, it's correct. Teddy, will you define these attainments, examples? I'm not sure I understand your question. If you can please clarify. A question from